So, you guys all know this truck. So, in our first long bed to short bed conversion video where we're actually doing the main part, we didn't go over some specifics that I kind of want to go over this. And it's been a requested video by a couple of you guys. We read your comments. So today we're going to go over basically everything I left out in the long bed to short bed conversion video. Consider this a part 2. Welcome to High House Stable Garage. So, very first thing, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. This was an 8-foot bed. Now, from basically right here, all the way to the end of the style side box, it's now 7'1". That's 7 feet 1 inch long. And again, that's from here to here. You can use that as a reference point. We cut 16.5 inches out from here. And basically, if it was an 8-foot bed, from here, it was like a segment like that. Then we basically drew it all forward and welded it all up, body fill, all that stuff. Another thing, just housekeeping wise, now your mileage may vary depending on the bolt size that you're using and everything, but from one corner bolt to this corner bolt, that's what we're dealing with right here. About 7 3/4. That's 7 feet and 3/4 of an inch long, and that's basically going from there to here. As you can see, ours was a 3-bolt bed. Another part that we had to deal with that some people won't is we moved our filler cap from here. You can still kind of see it because we didn't want to go full Bondo on this truck. There's very little Bondo right here. Basically, and then we grafted it right there. And there's a very good reason for that. That's because on the long bed tank, if you only have the one filler right here, you likely only have the one side saddle tank. When you do the short bed conversion on these trucks, you can no longer use the long bed tank without heavily modification to your frame, cross members, stuff like that, or to the tank itself. It's not worth the time. So we opted to use a rear tank, and we had to work with what we had. As for from here forward to the back of the cab forward, it's all stock basically. The long beds and the short beds share the same archetype from here forward. You don't have to change almost anything here, except some brake lines, fuel lines, stuff like that, but we'll go underneath the truck and I'll show you guys what those were. So here's a look at the weld seam right there, as you can see, and here's a look at my weld seam on my frame. As you can see, welded. We did a Z-cut, and then we have plate, and plate. It's triple plated on both sides. You don't want to screw around when you do this stuff, guys. Be safe about it. Over weld. If you can't weld good, weld lots. That's basically the rule of thumb. So for reference, we're right underneath the very front panel to the bed. And as you can see, it lined up perfectly with our 16.5-foot cut that we took out of this truck. Now, as for brake lines, fuel lines, electric, all that stuff. Brake lines, we simply did a quick little dirty union. You got to be able to flare your brake lines if you're going to do it this way, guys. So make sure you can do a good double flare, put a union in, or from basically that back corner where it arches down, that's where your steel line starts. You'll need your steel line for your short bed all the way up to your proportioning valve. That's that guy right there. And it's the front line that we're looking at right now. That's your rear line. So you'll need the short bed version of that if you don't want to put a union. Now, also, because we were running the saddle tank here and here, but we cut out that basically that big chunk, well, we had to move our electrical. So our lines for our actual tank, as you can see, that stuff right here, we had to move that back. So we had to add an extension piece. Not a big deal, but you need to know how to do wiring, or again, you have to get from the tank down to your block for the short bed in order to use it. For fuel lines, what we ended up doing, we ended up using 80 PSI rated rubber hose for EFI, but we're running low carb pressure through it anyway, so we're fine. So basically, we just made the difference out of the rubber line. But again, depending on your year, some years have like a almost like a Simflex. It's like a plastic line going from your tank to your carb or to your EFI system, or it's braided. There's a couple other things. If it's braided, you have to get it. If it's the plastic line, you could put a union. I wouldn't recommend it. The best course of action is to get the short bed fuel system from your tank to its end point. Real quick, let's get rid of some misconceptions with the long bed to short bed conversion. Now, in the 70s and 60s trucks, the rear tail section on those trucks, you had to shorten to get it to short bed spec. On the 80s and 90s trucks, the square body Fords, so your bull nose, your brick nose, and your arrow nose, the only modification you have to do is that 16 inches, that 16.5 inch section on the front. You do not touch the back. The only reason we did is for that fuel door. That's just bedside specific though. You do not have to cut here. That's a big misconception. Don't worry about that. The only reason you would ever cut here is if you wanted to make something completely custom. Now, this truck isn't the best example because the exhaust is completely custom from headers back, but obviously when you do the long bed to short bed conversion, if you had a long bed and now you go for a short bed, you have to adjust everything along that line. So that includes your exhaust. You're gonna have to basically get the short bed exhaust from the last flange to the back, or if you're fancy with a welder, take out 16.5 inches on your exhaust. Another thing you're gonna have to do is modify your drive shaft. On this truck, we have a 2-piece drive shaft because it has a 4-speed T19 transmission inside it. But if you have an automatic, you might have a single. So if it's a 2-piece, you don't have to modify your front section, only your rear. You only have to shorten that guy, again, by 16.5. If you do any suspension mods, now's the time to do them and then set it up after. But 16.5, if you're just doing the short bed conversion out of that. And then, if it's a long drive shaft, you're gonna have to do the same thing. 16.5 inches, lob it out, get it redone, weld it yourself, whatever you guys want to do. In summary, is it a hard thing to do a long bed to short bed conversion? Not necessarily just on Fords, but any truck? No. At least on the Ford, the F-150, if you're comfortable welding a 3/16 plate or higher, you can do a frame chop on these. Make sure that you only grind your welds where you're gonna plate. Don't grind your welds on the backside. You need as much strength as possible. Bevel your cuts, do all that kind of stuff. There's a few things that you gotta consider after you're done doing your long bed to short bed conversion, and this is the following. You're gonna notice a difference in its handling characteristics. One, because your turning radius is much shorter now, but two, your truck used to be able to wave over the bumps. Now it kind of jumps over the bumps. That's just, you shorten the wheelbase by 16.5 inches. So there's a few things that you can do to fix that. You can modify suspension, you can modify the stops in your steering box, but that's gonna be a completely different video. But let me know if you guys wanna see it. Now I hope you guys learned something, and I hope this answered some of the questions that you guys had. The only reason I did this video was because of you guys. You guys wanted to know the differences and a little bit more in depth on the long bed to short bed conversion. So if there's anything I missed in this video, let me know and I'll go over it some more. If not, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you guys in the next one very, very soon. See ya.